In the Kursk direction, the Ukrainian Dovbush Hornets unit of the 68th Separate Jaeger Brigade was carrying out routine reconnaissance when something unusual caught their attention, a blinking light near the front line. Quickly recognizing the potential for enemy activity, they decided to deploy a hunter drone to investigate further. As the drone approached, it soon confirmed suspicions. 2 Russian BMP infantry fighting vehicles had arrived and were unloading Russian soldiers onto the front line. The soldiers appeared to be preparing to fortify their position, perhaps in an attempt to push forward or strengthen an existing line. However, before they could establish themselves, the Ukrainian drone had a clear view of their movements. Spotting the hovering drone, the Russian soldiers began to fire on it in an attempt to bring it down, but their efforts were in vain. The drone remained unscathed, maneuvering skillfully to avoid their rounds. Within moments, the Ukrainian hunter drone locked onto the target and launched a precision-guided attack. In a swift, decisive strike, the drone neutralized the Russian infantry unit, leaving no time for the soldiers to regroup or defend against the incoming assault. In a tense moment on the front line, a Ukrainian soldier from the 425th Separate Assault Battalion, known as Skala, found himself isolated in a trench. Alone and heavily outnumbered, he was forced to defend his position against a group of 3 Russian soldiers advancing directly toward him. The scene was perilous. Close-quarters combat in the tight, narrow confines of the trench left little room for maneuvering or retreat. As the Russian invaders drew closer, the Ukrainian soldier stayed calm, drawing upon his training and quick thinking. Realizing that he had only seconds to act, he reached for his supply of grenades, which would be crucial in such a tight, enclosed space. With practiced precision, he began lobbing the grenades strategically, timing each throw to force the Russians into defensive positions. 2 Russian military intelligence soldiers were moving cautiously in their vehicle near the front line when they were detected by Ukraine's Stryker drone team. Recognizing the threat, the Stryker drone team quickly deployed a hunter drone to intercept them, aiming to halt their movement and prevent any possible intelligence gathering. As soon as the Russian soldiers noticed the approaching drone, they immediately tried to evade it. In a desperate attempt to avoid detection, they took cover around a large tree, driving in tight circles to stay out of the drone's direct line of sight. This evasive maneuver proved effective only for a moment, as the hunter drone remained locked onto their position. The first strike hit near the tree, causing the driver, likely startled by the explosion, to abandon cover and flee on foot. However, the other soldier, a Russian commander, was unwilling to leave his position despite the threat. Partially injured by the initial blast, he took cover behind the tree, attempting to outlast the drone's surveillance. But the Ukrainian surveillance team wasn't fooled. The Stryker drone company's surveillance drone maintained a close watch on the commander, observing his every movement as he nervously tested to see if the drone was still tracking him. Even injured, the commander began to play a dangerous game of cat and mouse, darting from cover to cover, hoping to escape the drone's watchful eye. But with each attempt, the surveillance drone kept pace, relaying his position back to the Stryker drone team. Realizing the commander was still lingering, the team dispatched another hunter drone to engage him. The second drone approached, and despite the commander's repeated attempts to evade, it struck near his position, further injuring him. In the aftermath, the commander, clearly wounded and disoriented, reached for his wireless radio, attempting to call for an evacuation. He relayed instructions over the radio, hoping for a quick extraction, but no rescue came. The Ukrainian drones continued to circle, ensuring he remained isolated, effectively thwarting any effort to extract him. This tactical response showcased not only Ukraine's precision in drone warfare, but also the psychological edge gained by using constant surveillance and sustained pressure to disorient and demoralize enemy soldiers. In a fierce battle in the Kurakhove sector, Ukraine's 79th Brigade Tauride paratroopers faced one of their toughest challenges yet. Russian forces launched a large-scale assault with the goal of overwhelming the Ukrainian defenses. This time, they mobilized an impressive array of firepower: 13 armored vehicles loaded with infantry, 4 main battle tanks, a highly advanced Terminator tank support vehicle, and even 4 motorcycles for swift maneuvering across the terrain. The Russian plan was clear: overwhelm the paratroopers with sheer numbers and brute force. However, Ukraine's 79th Brigade was not about to let their defensive line be breached. As the Russian column approached, the paratroopers swiftly initiated a counter-offensive operation, turning the Russians' organized assault into what some on the front lines called a deadly merry-go-round. It became a scene of coordinated Ukrainian defense at its finest, deploying artillery, attack drones, anti-tank missile systems, and mines in a relentless sequence of precise strikes. In total, 3 Russian tanks were partially damaged in the initial stages and eventually had to retreat under heavy fire. Realizing the scale of Ukrainian resistance, many Russian soldiers were forced to abandon their offensive and scatter, attempting to hide in nearby positions to avoid further strikes. Ukrainian forces reported that 23 Russian soldiers were neutralized during the battle, while the rest of the assaulting forces were compelled to find cover and wait for extraction or reinforcements. The aftermath of the failed assault was devastating for the Russian side. By the end of the engagement, Ukraine's 79th Brigade had successfully destroyed 9 armored vehicles, 2 tanks, the Terminator tank support vehicle, and all 4 motorcycles used by Russian troops. In addition, 2 more armored vehicles were heavily damaged. In another update from the front line, a video shared by Ukraine's 46th Brigade captured the precise destruction of 3 Russian air defense systems, 1 Buk M2, 1 Buk M3, and a Tor system in the Donetsk region. These advanced systems, designed to intercept aerial threats, were taken down in a coordinated attack, showcasing Ukraine's evolving capability to neutralize Russian air defenses. The loss of these systems marks a significant blow to Russia's ability to defend its positions against aerial strikes and highlights a growing vulnerability on the Eastern Front. Russia has been launching intense assaults across multiple sections of the Eastern Front, attempting to penetrate Ukraine's defensive lines with heightened force. As the fighting escalates, Ukrainian forces have deployed hunter drones, highly effective in locating and targeting Russian assets with precision. During a separate operation, a Russian 2S9 Nana-S self-propelled artillery system, a vehicle-mounted weapon that combines the firepower of a mortar and artillery, was spotted by Ukrainian reconnaissance. A hunter drone was dispatched to intercept the 2S9 Nana-S, successfully destroying it in a swift, targeted strike. Shortly after, a group of Russian infantry on motorcycles was detected advancing towards Ukrainian positions. The Ukrainian command acted quickly, deploying kamikaze drones to intercept and neutralize this fast-moving unit before they could reach their destination. The drones successfully disrupted and destroyed the Russian motorized infantry, preventing them from engaging Ukrainian forces and adding yet another setback to the Russian offensive. In an additional video shared by Ukraine's 108th Brigade, footage reveals a series of precise strikes on entrenched Russian positions. The brigade targeted a Russian trench position. As part of the operation, a Russian T-80 tank was also identified and promptly targeted, disabling the tank and limiting Russian armored support in the area. The strikes continued with the destruction of a camouflaged mortar gun, hidden in an attempt to launch covert attacks on Ukrainian positions. These tactical victories underscore the effectiveness of Ukrainian drone operations and precision strikes in degrading Russian capabilities. The success of these coordinated attacks has not only weakened Russia's air defense and artillery assets, but also eroded their morale as Ukrainian forces continue to counter intense assaults across the Eastern Front.